Sziasztok! Hello! Képzeljétek, elkezdjük ezt az eseményt. Közben anélkül is lenne értelme összegyűlni, hogy itt bármi van a színpadon, mert láthatóan jól érzitek magatokat, jó a hely, jó a társaság, de ha már így szerveztük meg, akkor mégiscsak beszéljünk valamit itt is. A napnak egy csomóan már voltatok ilyenen korábban, de aki nem, annak elmondom, hogy ez a legalábbis ugye a Világzene címke alatt futó része ennek a sorozatnak, ez évente egyszer van. Általában ugyanebben a szerkezetben. Néhány neves külföldi szakembert szoktunk ilyenkor meghívni, hogy fókuszáltan tudjunk beszélni velük, illetve veletek a magyar piacról, a ti esélyeitekről, a nemzetközi arénában és ilyesmikről. A formátum az laza, lesz 2 panel, és utána pedig egy listening session, amire egy csomóan küldtetek be dalokat, mindegyikbe bele fogunk hallgatni. Ez lesz az utolsó, tehát ha még akarjátok, még addig nem tudom remasterelni őket, akkor még van egy pár óra, de ennek a beszélgetésnek a formátuma az pedig olyan értelemben is szabad, hogy nyugodtan kérdezzetek közben is, nem kell várni, hogy a végén legyen egy Q&A rész. Ilyen lakáskoncert feelingje van úgyis annak, hogy el vagyunk helyezkedve, tekintsetek erre úgy, mint egy lakáspanelre, ahol közben lehet szólni. És akkor mostantól viszont angolul fogunk beszélgetni. Yeah, that was my short intro in Hungarian, and the rest of the day I assure you will be in English. So in our first panel we have 2 guests, Rok Košir from Ljubljana, Slovenia. A lot of capacities, but the primary is booking agent. That's your preference. And Russ Slater, who's also done many things in life. Right now he's the editor-in-chief of Songlines, a magazine that I'm sure all of you know, or most of you at least know, but also previously Russ had other projects. You might remember the Sounds and Colors. What's that? A platform, a brand, a platform, yeah, which was pretty cool. I loved it when it was. It's still on, yeah. Right? It's still on, but not done by. Yeah, it's another team. Anyway, we'll get back to that too. So, and in this first panel, we'll discuss basically how to promote internationally, from your perspective, how to break through internationally. That's usually the holy grail of any of these discussions, because that's what you all want. I know, I see it in your eyes. So yeah, let's tell them how to break through. Do you have any? I know you don't. But do you have any magic words?
Magic words?
Yeah, how to break through abracadabra.
I mean, I guess the biggest thing with my Songlines hat on is just to have a good story, which is kind of the thing I'm looking for any artist that we're going to feature. And that story could come in lots of different ways. It could be related to the live show, it could be related to an album, it could be related to identity. But it just needs to be something that makes an artist stand out, essentially, which is kind of what I'm always looking for, and it is kind of the hardest thing to possibly find. But yeah, I mean, that is, I think you can tell when an artist is going to break through when they've got that. There's like an interesting story to go with some really good music.
Yeah, I don't have magic wand as well. But what I would say at the beginning, that even though I completely understand this wish to go internationally, you shouldn't neglect going locally first. Only when you get significant recognition locally, you can hope for going internationally. before you will be featured in the Songlines. If you will be completely unknown within your place, I guess your story will be more difficult to reach the Songlines. So I think it's quite important to develop this local audience first, local recognition, and of course simultaneously think and hope for international development, but it shouldn't be the only goal. Because I think there was no time in history with so much good music as it happens now. People are skeptical to my claim, but I think there is so much great stuff going on that it's more difficult to get to be internationally recognized because competition is greater, but in a way selection is lower because of all platforms. There is so much of everything that it's really difficult to stand out. So if you really, if you want to hope for something interesting to happen, you need to stand out in a certain way. And what he said before, the story, interesting story, of course, but great music is a very good start.
So the story is not just needed for the media, it's needed for you to be able to sell as well.
Definitely. I mean, as I said, there is so much of good music that there are people who are always saying, yeah, but I'm such a good musician. Why internationally I'm not recognized? It's just not enough. It's not maybe even necessary to be the best musician. It's sometimes more important to have whether a story or something which distinguishes you, which makes you different. So definitely this story is not only for media, is of course also for the audience, because audience have now opportunity to see so many live music, and the attention of audience is getting smaller and smaller, shorter and shorter. They give you like literally 15 seconds, as you know, and if you don't stand out, they scroll to another artist.
Okay, so let's have a closer look what that story means, because okay, when the term world music was coined, being from Hungary was already a story in itself, or from Cabo Verde or from Bolivia, whatever, because the place of origin made it interesting already. But I assume it's not the case anymore, because being a musician and being from somewhere, everybody is playing music and everybody is from somewhere. So it's not enough anymore. So you either sing a repertoire that you learned from your grandfather, or you make your own instrument, or you've been featured in an interesting collaboration with someone. What's a good story for you?
Well, I guess, an example that we're working on at the minute for the next issue of Songlines is La Nina, who's this kind of revelation of the last year in Italy. And I guess with her, it was just the fact that she has written a whole album in Napoletano, which was her kind of local language, and also did just tons of research in terms of the history of Naples and connected that to the Arabic world and Middle East. And then even with the instruments, there's these really interesting experimentations with frame drums and with local instruments. So it wasn't like she was just playing the local instruments, she was doing something different with them as well. And so that was one where it was like, well, we've never heard anything like this, and the songs are great. So then it was like, well, actually, that is someone we have to feature. So it is like, yeah, and I guess similarly maybe with some of the Mediterranean artists we're featuring a lot at the minute, like Cocagna, La Sara Fontan, they're doing traditional music, but again, they're doing some really interesting concepts. What's the artist who did, like, there's a whole live show which is about bread, and she bakes bread on stage, which is like a connection to her father who was a baker, and the songs are about baking bread. So it's kind of related to tradition, but they're doing it in an interesting way, which maybe isn't just a presentation of the music that they grew up with. It's actually trying to put that in a new context. So that is one of the ways that some of these stories are standing out, which is to kind of changing the context, kind of bringing different things in, maybe going even deeper into the history or looking more at the present day.
Being a baker might be also useful, having a second job in the current economic.
Well, that too, yeah. Exactly. If you could sell a few sourdough loaves on the side, you're doing all right.
And bread as merchandise. I mean, what's a good story for you, Rok? You basically are as a booking agent. You're in connection with the buyers, the end users. What's a good argument from your side to sell?
When I look at the artists I work with, everybody has different stories. It's very, very. Maybe the roster I have is too varied. It's too colorful. So I really cannot say that there is only one story which is standing out. But if I think of each of one of my artists, everybody has some story which stands out. While he mentioned making bread on the stage, I work with 2 Koreans who can make a tofu while they are playing a concert. And I work with a band whose singer is cheesemaker. And sometimes I sell merch after concerts, and I sell at least in numbers of money, definitely more cheese than his CDs. It's brilliant merch. I mean, he became he started to sell so much cheese after his concerts that he became famous in Slovenia. When he comes to play, people come to the concert, but also to buy his cheese. Then you mentioned that the singer sings repertoire of ancient repertoire, for example. I work with an artist whose grandfather is basically known as the best Bosnian sevdah singer of all time, and his grandson is now making quite successful career, even though he didn't want to go that way at the beginning at all, because he didn't want to be in a shadow of his grandfather. But it's a story when he talks about that he was listening to the punk music, jazz music, just to avoid his father's music. It's already a story which is interesting. And now he came from United States. Actually, people loved his speeches about his relation to tradition, which is he broke it completely. He's really not traditional musician in many ways. Then I have a band who plays. It's a trio band with 25 instruments. It's already a story. When you see all those instruments on the stage, it's hard to believe that they will play all those instruments, but somehow they manage to do it. So it's really, you always have to find some narrative which stands out.
So basically this sounds like you need mental anchors that people can identify you with, right? So that's...
Yeah, no, definitely. Which is why I guess identity comes into a lot of it, because that is something that you will remember as part of this kind of, if that can be intrinsic part of your identity, then that is going to, and the kind of project that you're doing, then that is a way that people are going to remember that story, and also, yeah, just kind of cling on to whatever it is you're doing, really, and become memorable, which is what you're doing. I mean, I did want to say with all this, where there is that idea actually that there are just some things we see that are just amazing musically. Like at Womex, Yegor Zabalov was just one of the most incredible concerts I've ever been to, and there wasn't a story to that. That was just incredible music. So there is that side too.
Which one was that?
The Belarusian accordionist. Yeah.
Zabelov.
Yegor Zabalov. Yeah. So there is that side as well, which is like the flip side, where it is actually where someone musically has just come up with or worked out exactly who they want to be, and they're able to just play that music the way they want on stage, and and it's an incredible thing to see. So there is that side as well. I don't want to kind of go too much down the novelty bread and cheese route, but no.
No, I agree 100% that it needs to be the music in the core of everything, but it helps to get to wider audience if you have something besides the music. And here I really want to emphasize also the role of media, like where to sell, where to get these stories. Songlines, perfect. It's one of the best platforms to find out about the musicians, and it's really it can be a change. It can change your career if you get attention of such an important media like Songlines or some other media. Like I think I saw Veronica before, Varga. Her album made really breakthrough, I think, through media recently, and maybe she can tell how much it changed the reception of her music because of media attention she got. And I can also tell you that if you have it was a case of one band I work with, and it was listed in Quietus, like not even at the yearly chart, but in half a year, and it was the best album of first half of year. And I heard from the label that the sales tripled after that. So it helps. Media is still a very good tool to get to the people, to the audience.
Veronica, do you want to share? Cool.
But yeah, no, I think there is the hard bit. There is a tension, isn't there, between authenticity and accessibility, which I guess is at the core of this, which is you kind of want to make the music accessible, which maybe involves creating these stories or accentuating certain aspects of your music to sell that music. But at the end of the day, you don't want to be inauthentic and take it to somewhere else entirely. And just to kind of give an example, which is related to some things that Rok said as well, which was, because I used to write a lot about Colombian music, still do a fair bit. But like Frente Cumbiero, who's a band from Bogota, they actually purposefully tried to get an international audience first because their market in Bogota was so small, and they were really well known there, like a really, really popular band, but still trying to sell records or there was just no way to get records pressed in Colombia. So they actually went international first, and they did the album with Mad Professor, which was a British dub producer. And so actually by creating that collaboration, that allowed a lot of the UK press to kind of take interest, because we all knew Mad Professor from his stuff with Massive Attack and so on, and we all know about dub. And that made what they were doing accessible without kind of losing the core of what their music was about. And that meant that they pressed records, and then people in Bogota, back in Bogota and wider in Colombia, were like, oh, okay, there's a band who've got a vinyl record, and they're going places. And so then within Colombia, that increased their reputation there. So that was an interesting way where they actually looked outside first to improve their kind of reputation inside. And now, even now, they get a lot of records pressed in Japan. They found an audience in Japan as well. So they were very canny in terms of looking around and seeing, like, actually where else could we find an audience. And then, and that kind of fed into, they ended up doing Onda Tropica, a big project in Colombia, which they wouldn't have done without that kind of vinyl record that they did for the first album. So that was one, but they did it all while still being authentic to what they were all about. They were still cumbia, it was still kind of had their aesthetic. So yeah, that's just an example anyway, just to kind of give.
I think it's actually often the case. It's also, for example, with this Seuda singer I mentioned at the beginning, his music wasn't well received in his home country because it wasn't traditional enough. So he first had to be recognized outside to be welcome back home. And it's funny, every time he does something, let's say big internationally, like recently he recorded a KXP session in Seattle, and bookings from Bosnia started to come. Now our guy made it in America, now he's good enough. Before he was not traditional enough, he was kind of revolutionary, he's killing our tradition. But if America bought it, now he's accepted.
Yeah, so lecture number 1, have a story, which is basically like think of 2 or 3 words that you want the people to remember you from, and try to practice telling that story in an engaging and coherent way.
It's hard though. I mean, I used to write press releases for artists as well, and you're trying to think of something that's going to get people's attention when they read it, because I've been on both sides, so actually I get sent so many press releases every day, and there's no way that you can be completely focused on each one and treat and listen to each one basically. So you do need something to be like, well, actually there's something that makes me think this is going to be interesting. And I mean, in some ways there is, even when you get just sent an email directly from an artist and they actually write something kind of from the heart, sometimes can be a way in as well, because then that actually stands out against the whatever 100 press releases that you've got before that,
Yeah, I mean, if it's personal, it always goes through easier. I think.
Yeah, exactly. And especially if they've done their homework as well, in terms of they know what Songlines is, and they've read the magazine, they maybe say, I've read an interesting review or whatever. If it comes from an honest place, then you can appreciate that they have thought about it and thought about that email and sent it and are hoping that you'll listen, which we kind of do when it is someone who's written something personal like that.
You mentioned press releases, but also I think when we are talking about a band, let's say I'm telling you about a band and you don't know that band, and I said, these are those people who, I don't know, are making their instruments from trash cans. Yeah. And the trash cans, yeah.
Exactly. Full of muziki.
Yes, whatever, yeah. It's so there's always like some specialty about an artist that we refer with them to.
Exactly, but then there's the point where it becomes a cliche with something like that as well, because now there must be like a dozen kind of bands who make instruments out of recycled materials. Sure. So then it is about finding something else, or some other way of kind of standing out a little bit. But that's true.
Okay, lecture number 2. You mentioned math professor.
Yeah.
And it sounds, very easy, but it's not. No. But yes, collaborating internationally, that's like, that can be a gate opener for the markets. Well, what do you think about that? Is that a good way and easy way?
I don't know if any of it's easy, but I mean, it's definitely an interesting way to reach a new audience, because you are kind of piggybacking on that audience and then vice versa. So, and we're constantly just listening to so much music. So actually, even if we see someone's name pop up a few times before we get the album, then actually you've already got that little awareness of that artist as well. So then it does make sure that, okay, this is they're associated with these kind of artists. But which I think is like a big part of it as well, in terms of that association, which you do have with artists. So if you do get sent something and they've worked with X and X, then that does affect your first opinion of them, because you're like, actually, well, I like X and X, so we've got to give this one a shot. So no, I think collaborating is always, I don't see how it can be a bad thing.
I don't have many experience with that kind of collaborations, but just recently, some interesting story happened with this Korean duo, The Loom, which I mentioned before. It's not really a collaboration, but when I was looking for a gap between some concerts, I found out that Colin Stetson is playing in a venue where in a place where I supposed to book them, and I got in touch with his agent and actually intended that they will open for the whole tour of him on his request, basically, because he really liked the idea and called back like immediately, yeah, let's do it, all tour, not only one concert. And when it started to happen, I had two free slots for them, and after mentioning that they are touring in the UK with Colin Stetson, easy. We will do it. It changes the perspective of promoters.
And another example from that, using Colin Stetson as an example, is Bridget Heimbull, who's a Scottish bagpipe, small pipes player, and she did an album with Colin Stetson, but then that exploded, in the Weyer and kind of more on the experimental side. So it opened her up to a completely new audience, where before she was very known within folk circles, but then this was like suddenly, you know, and now the Weyer review.
I mean, to be completely honest, it helped a little bit that Brigitte and the Loom are at the same label. So it was a bit easier to talk. Gotcha. And I used Brigitte as a reference to mention that they're on the same label, that he should check out. And that helped.
Tactile. Right, yeah. Okay, so other than the instant magic, so are we stuck with, you know, disciplined, consequent, patient work for years?
Inshallah. I have no idea. But what I really believe is something which we tackled before, that this interpersonal relationship are the most useful probably. This sending emails, tons of emails, okay, something can happen, but usually it's better to talk directly to the people, to go to people, to meet people, to present yourself, even though if you feel stupid, rejected, but I think it's much easier to get in touch with people you need to work with and to get their attention.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with that. If I meet with someone and we spend a lot of time together, then, I mean, just from a personal connection, it makes it, means that I'm going to listen to whatever they send me next. And, you know, especially if they told me what they're working on. And you kind of get into some of the little details which you can't really on emails, which people will tell you, you know, maybe the next couple of projects they're thinking of doing and so on. And that's, and then actually you then map out, okay, this person's, you know, maybe going places, and it does make you, more aware of what they're up to. And you've got that personal connection, which in contact with so many people via email these days. So yeah, that definitely, anything that makes you stand out is going to help.
If it was just email, I mean,
you can have great relationships via email as well, which sometimes has to be. But yeah, personal connection, you can't beat it, can you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's why we're here. Don't forget to mingle in the coffee breaks with these influential people on stage. So what kind of allies do you need for international breakthrough? Do you need like a press people, an agent, a label, or what do you think is the most mission critical?
The most? I think it's, again, combination of many things, many factors. I'm lucky enough to work a lot with musicians who are based around one label, Glitterbit Records, who are very helpful. Again, what they are best at is, I wouldn't say telling stories, but how to get the stories of those bands to the people. I mean, their British publicist, Ilka, she's a tour de force. I mean, when you come with your artist to the UK, you will always get 10 journalists to the concert because she will drag them personally to the concert. And she wouldn't let them go before the end of the concert. And she's really tour de force. But if that surrounding is there of a label, media, of course, it's much easier to an agent. It's almost impossible to do something to book. Even if the band is great, you cannot book it if promoter never heard of it. He can trust you, yes, maybe because you're a friend and you talk to him and you can convince him, but usually he would need to know something more of the band. So this whole surrounding needs to be fixed, I think, to get a really international career.
How many of you has an international agent, or a Hungarian agent, but working internationally? Okay, 2. How many of you have a foreign label? Released on a foreign label? Okay, publicist, PR. Okay. No, it was just a quick test, so it's way to go. It's a huge market if you want to enter.
No, it's true, isn't it? I guess, I mean, there are some roles where possibly, you can kind of make it on your own, but it's interesting what you said about the booking agent. I mean, in the UK, you can kind of do a tour of lots of small DIY venues, which you can kind of book yourself, but you're not going to, it's be hard to make any money from it, and you're going to be playing to very small audiences. But if you want to tour, then that, there is ways to do that. But to actually scale anything up, then I think it does require some help and kind of knowing people in the industry. There's always, getting through the door. It always helps to have contacts. Obviously, with a label, with a PR, they have lots of contacts too. So it's it depends what your ambitions are, doesn't it? I think it comes down to a little bit.
And then the inevitable question: showcases. Is it needed? If yes, how? Which ones? For international breakthrough.
I mean, my problem with showcases is that there are too many of them, and they're just popping up all the time. We have a kind of a joke among several friends in the past. We said, like, if you don't know how to organize a concert, then organize a festival. And if you don't know how to organize the festival, organize a showcase festival. I'm not saying that all showcases are organized like that. Actually, I'm involved with some very good ones, but it just became I would even say, like, showcasization of the scene. Why I don't find it really healthy is that it happens to many bands, actually, that they circulate within the bubble of showcase festivals. And then they play, like, I know for a band which played 6 showcases in 1 year, and they didn't get a single booking out of them. They were just invited to another showcase festivals. And then you ask yourself a question: does it make sense? In a way, yes, if you want to travel around, see places, mingle, but is this something valuable for your career? It's a questionable. It's something which I don't have an answer to at all. I don't know how to tackle this. Still, even though I have some reservations, I think they became necessary. Without going to at beginning of your career, you cannot avoid. Basically, you cannot break through only without showcases. You cannot get immediately to some tours, festivals, or whatever. I mean, for sure there are exceptions, but it is in a way, can be a good shortcut or maybe even a necessary step. At least that's how I see it.
Mm. Well, yeah, funnily enough, I was thinking of an example from the last Womex where I got pitched just the other week to do a story on a Danish group called Betoy, on the back of the fact they'd showcased at Womex last year, and I emailed back and I said, well, actually, their showcase got cancelled, so they didn't actually perform. And they're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, they didn't.
Their flights all got cancelled.
One of the ladies couldn't get from Stockholm. Yeah.
But that was an example of they were booked to play a showcase and they didn't even play, and they were getting some traction off the back of it, which was interesting. But I mean, we're trying to do with Songlines, we are trying to do more kind of content or editorial that works better to help artists who are showcasing. So we're working with Hangvető on this upbeat project which they have, and we're actually going to profile some of the artists who are getting showcased through that project they've got, which, because to me it does feel strange sometimes with showcases. There's so many artists competing, and actually if we're just going there and we're writing one sentence about each, then how useful is that in terms of for those artists? Wouldn't it be better if we just focused on one of those artists that we really fell in love with? So we are kind of trying to address that a little bit with showcase artists in terms of trying to make that be something actually worthwhile from our side. But yeah, I mean, it all depends on the showcases. I've had lots of really good testimonies from artists who played Showcase Scotland, which is part of Celtic Connections, and people really tend to love that festival, love the Showcase Scotland, which had lots of Canadian artists were there this year. And that always seems to get some traction for the artists. So there are ones where, you know, it can be really useful. It is a matter of kind of picking out which ones, I guess.
Yeah, I think what you say is actually very, very accurate. There are showcases which are very useful because they are focused. They have some narrative, some whether it's regional, whether it's genre orientated, and I think those are the most useful. And if I would be applying for showcases, I would think about what I can achieve through the showcase. Then I would go for those who are in a way specialized and focused on something. And of course, there are several which are like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose when you are applying for a showcase, you need to consider the kind of people that will see you there. If it's your potential allies, buyers, market.
Exactly. I mean, even an example, which is maybe not a showcase, but I know with La Linea, which is a big Latin festival that happens in London, with some of the kind of less established artists, I know they're having to pay some of the quite an amount to come over to be part of La Linea, but the fact that they are part of this huge Latin music festival in London actually has lots of benefits, and that one is really, really focused. So that, I mean, that's very comparable in terms of it's just about looking for those right opportunities and actually maybe even looking at the trajectories of other artists who have performed at these and being like, well, actually, I think I could do what they did from playing that festival or that showcase. And yeah, it's always a good way to follow a well-trodden path now, can be helpful in that regard.
Okay, what else is needed on the road?
A lot of patience.
A lot of patience, of course, but also I know that it can be a concern that do the artists need to invest
Yeah, I mean,
in this career? Is it what needs to be invested? Is it just time or is it money or?
What Russ mentioned before, like UK is now a very good example. If you are at the beginning of your career, you actually can play some places, but you need to invest time, money. I mean, at the beginning you would lose a lot of money. I remember first UK tour, if we wouldn't get support from the embassy, I think we would be like £2,000 in minus, something like that, because it was disaster in many ways. But in long term, it turned out that it was useful. So investment was paid back, luckily, with the help of the embassy. I mean, nowadays there are lots of export offices who are helping artists, and it can make the difference.
Yeah, one is organizing this event.
Yeah, and it really can make the difference because generally speaking, borders in Europe are closing, not opening. Places are more and more focused on local artists, and they support local artists. And audience and promoters are more and more I don't want to say narrow-minded, even though it's maybe not far from the truth. So if you don't have this support, with the fees that are available, you risk of, again, losing money, investing your time and money. And then the question is, how long are you willing to do it? How much time do you have? How much finances do you have? How much stamina you have? And there's just there's no one-side answer to this, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, in terms of time, it definitely shows when artists have spent some time in terms of organising just actually how they're going to promote. an album or a tour. And, you know, in terms of, sometimes, you know, we'll get sent press releases for an album that came out last month, and then it becomes really hard to actually review that because, you know, because we're press, like our cycle is, if we receive something, it's not going to be at least two months till we get that in print. So if it's already been out a month, then it's going to be 3 months old by the time it comes out. And then we're quite possibly going to prioritize the newer albums because there's just so much music. We've got to kind of make some priorities there. So actually, when you get those press releases and it's got the links to the music, and especially like streaming links, making it really easy to find the music, the information about the music is kind of right there at the top, so you know exactly what it is. And like I say, just being on top of things in advance, which is, you know, easier said than done perhaps, but like, but those things, that investment in time does actually really show. And if someone has spent that much time kind of getting their house in order or whatever before they release something, then, you know, then that does kind of show and helps, you know, journalists, which, you know, we do get sent a lot of music. So anything that you can do to kind of help that, if that is, you know, if you are trying to get a review in print, then that is going to make a difference.
Don't forget, if you have questions, you don't need to wait until the end. But in the meantime, when we hear about a band, at least in this area of music, the first thing we hear about them there, it's a band from Colombia, it's a band from India, whatever, and we already expect some kind of music, even if it's not true. Not every Colombian band is playing cumbia, or not every Indian band, not to talk about that, is playing raga. What does coming from Hungary mean to the outside world these days? What is the perception? What is the sort of music, sort of style, atmosphere, whatever that you expect to hear?
Oh my goodness! See, that is being put on the spot, isn't it?
That's what I'm talking about.
Do you want to go with that one? Well, obviously, Sondogo is a band that we feature a lot. So in terms of that kind of high musicianship, kind of some of the instruments there, cymbalum and so forth, that they use, perhaps. I mean, in terms of the stuff we get sent, it is going to be more of that music that is coming from some traditional elements. So kind of high-paced music, some kind of brass, lots of different, you know, string instruments than perhaps we used to. And but yeah, I don't know in terms of. Yeah.
No, I have problems answering these questions because, lucky enough, I was in Hungary quite a lot in recent years, and I heard so many different bands from Hungary that I don't have these pre-assumptions. But I was also sitting in several juries for different showcase and other festivals, and there was a tendency of...
you'll be Womack Samurai this year.
I am, yes.
So I'm sure there are some people in the room who are planning to apply.
Do it fast. Yeah. Lots of music sounded very similar to me. To my ears, this music, which I also hear in tanzhazas, or how do you call them, I cannot really distinguish when they are saying, yeah, we use 12 different rhythms from 15 different areas of Hungary. To my ears, it's unfortunately pretty much similar. But when somebody uses it in different way, to use something more catchy, something more maybe even experimental, or something which makes them different, that's usually it caught my ear. That makes me more interested in what they do.
Russ, do you think it's a problem that there is no simple answer for this question? Like, I don't know, Portugal, fado. That's simple. Or is it a problem or is it an advantage?
It can be. I think it can be either, for sure. I mean, the problem, if you would talk about fado as an example, is that for any artist that's not a fado artist...
Yeah, for them it's a problem.
Exactly. But if you are a fado artist, then it's obviously like this is a there's plenty of places you can sing in Portugal and places people are going to listen to your music as well outside of Portugal. So I think it can work for both. I mean, it'd be nice for there to be a few more artists that we can actually say these are the key artists, at least, that we feature on Songlines. But I mean, it's quite often the kind of artists who are doing something completely different that we end up getting drawn to anyway. So
who have you featured recently? Yeah.
Who have we featured recently? Well, the big problem is I listened to some Hungarian things that we're going to talk about maybe in the listening party.
Yeah.
And there's lots of artists, so I was like, we should have featured these in Songlines. We should have featured these artists. What are we doing? So, I mean, the big one is, Zondogo, and then who else is there? Hold on. Is it Veronica? Is it?
Yes,
Veronica Vargas.
Yeah, that's the Veronica there.
There we go. It's not. She's not been featured yet. Or have you actually? Was it last issue or is it next issue? I can't remember.
February's issue.
Okay.
Was review.
There you go. There's a review. Yes. Okay. But it's very minor. So like we're talking about, that's probably in terms of like the
I'm
just
talking about that record. That's really getting like good publicity now.
Yeah.
Do you think it's because on a international label who you have a good relationship with, CPL Music, not just you, other media as well, or because it just technically simply reaches you, the album, because they reach out to you like on a regular basis?
Yeah, definitely it helps with there's lots of record labels that are constantly releasing things, and we do listen to all of their records.
And if the same album would be self-released and Veronica would have sent it to you personally, would it have the same chances?
I mean, if I'm being honest, possibly not.
Please be.
Yeah, exactly. Possibly not, but this is where that artist development can make a difference, because actually, if you are presenting it in a certain way, then we can take as much attention. But if it is a one-sentence email that says, I've released a new album, and here's the link on Spotify, and there is little else, then it's possible we may miss that, So it does. But if there is a really interesting email there, or whatever, or we meet in person, or whatever it may be, then there's obviously, it doesn't have to be that way. So yeah.
I mean, I can tell you an anecdote how this record reached me. I was written an email, a WhatsApp message from Croatian friend who got it from CPL, and he sent it to me. So it definitely helps if you have international release.
Yeah, of course. I booked Hungarian artists from showcases outside of the country, of course. I mean, this kind of thing happens. And, I mean, that's a very nice record. Well done. That helps too. So it's not just the label.
Yeah. It came with a recommendation. It didn't arrive with like any negative note. No.
Yeah. We are heading to the end of this panel. So I told you don't have to wait until the end with your questions, but you did.
I have one. I have a question about how often you've seen artists building a career online first, because you mentioned the borders hardening gradually and the difficulty of touring. And is that a thing that you've seen? And I'm not really talking about people blowing up on TikTok suddenly, but people who gradually built a following online and then been able to translate that to live shows.
It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, I think that is kind of possibly one of the big turning points that is, potentially happening, which is this idea of gatekeepers versus direct to fans. I'm trying to think of some examples actually, but there is definitely artists where perhaps we will take more interest because I wish I could think of an example where we take more interest because when we do look at what they've produced online and they've got like a huge following and they've got various albums, and then you actually realize, there's something about these lot.
There was quite a few of those during COVID, actually. So some artists came out better, I think, from COVID because they were really innovative with their, home concerts, online videos, whatever.
Yeah, no, for sure. There's loads of folk examples actually from England, Ohuli and Tito, and there was all these ones that built up these really big reputations for sure. So it definitely helps in terms of when we're looking at artists and working out how to feature and knowing that you have got like an interesting back catalogue and gone through various different phases and built, you know, obviously a huge following. But
yeah, for me it helps, but it's not the main criteria, not at all, because I'm really bad at judging based on video, on YouTube clips. I almost always make a mistake. If I like something, live can be terrible, and vice versa. So it can be a good recommendation, it can get my attention, but I'm maybe old-fashioned or whatever, but I really need to see it live. Or sometimes also recommendations from people which I trust, which I know they share my taste or my idea about the music. That helps a lot. Usually more than only YouTube.
How do you feel about live clips on YouTube?
Again, very similar. I try to avoid them. I mean, just I get it for information, just to get familiar with, but I want to see it live. It needs to. It changes if I see it live, definitely.
Oh, I think it can help for me for sure. I actually was thinking of Dubiosa Collective, who's like a Bosnian band who they went crazy during COVID. They did so much online footage, but actually some of the live shows and live recordings that they've got on YouTube really created an impression when we were looking at featuring them in the magazine. So like for them, for sure, that was one where you could see the energy, like that kind of leapt out. So I think it can really, really help in terms of having that, those live recordings.
Yeah, any other questions? Okay, so now then we are very sharp on time for a coffee break. And as I said, try to talk to these people over the coffee tables as well. And come up with your stories.
Or just say hello, that's fine.
I'm sure you have, that too. But I'm sure you have your stories ready already. You had an hour to think about those. Thank you very much, Russ, Rok.
Thank you.
Thank you too.